Get that fucking trash out of your life. You have legacies to build. We grew that business from 3.4 million to 17.1. Horsepower, not horse shit. You want to be the parent that's an ally. They don't need another fucking friend. Not everybody's cup of whiskey. Toughest advice for the toughest businessmen. Be relentless. 4 years ago, my wife Krista saved my father's life. It's an incredible story, and it's one of those things where you think of the sliding door moments in your life. The great Brene Brown talks about sliding door moments in your life. The 3 or 4 things that happen throughout your lifetime that make all the difference in your life. A person that you meet, somewhere that you go, and you happen to, it's more than a coincidence. And these sliding door moments are, they're life changing. They change the direction of your life. And one of these sliding door moments for all of us was 4 years ago, when Krista literally saved my father's life. And here we are 4 years later, and my dad is 89 years old. He's in good physical health. He's in good mental health. He's living independently with my mom in the house that we were raised in. They live on a beautiful 35-acre property about 15 minutes outside of town. My dad still drives. They're 100% self-reliant at the age of 89. But it all could have come to an abrupt end 4 years ago if it wasn't for the incredible, badass intuition of my beautiful wife, Krista. I'll never forget this. I'll never forget what she did for my father. I will never forget what she did for our family. And it was all based in the fact she's always thinking of other people. She has that incredible quality that she's always empathetic, always compassionate, and always looking to help people. I mean, most people are generous and kind, but my wife has a gift in those areas when it comes to serving other people, always seeing the best in other people. I don't have that gift. My wife, Krista, has taught me as much as she can in that situation, but she always sees the best in other people, especially in situations where there's not a lot of good to see. She'll say to me, but Michael, you haven't walked a mile in his shoes. Or she'll say something like, well, considering the parents that he had, or considering the situation that he grew up in, or the role models that she had, always seeing the best in other people. So it was 4 years ago. My dad had recently retired, finally, after 65 years as an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur for 65 years, more than 65. If you count, he started working at age 15, right during high school. When he dropped out of high school, he started working at age 15 and retired at age 85 from the insurance business. So this was the first year that my dad hadn't been working since he was 15 years old, and things were going well with him and my mother. And what was then, all of a sudden, my dad started feeling incredibly lethargic. He didn't feel like himself. He was dizzy when he would wake up in the morning. He'd get up to walk, and he'd have to sit on the edge of the bed. He had some inner ear issues some equilibrium issues in the past, so he kind of passed it off as inner ear that would pass in a handful of days. But he was really, really low energy, which is not my dad, if you know it. He just didn't have any get up and go, he would say. He just felt really, really fatigued, really tired, and it just went on for at least a couple of weeks. He went and saw his doctor, and of course his doctor said, well, Frank, there's nothing wrong with you other than the fact we did some tests, and we see that your blood pressure is a little bit high. Well, my dad doesn't have high blood pressure. My dad, walks every day. My dad's in fantastic health. My dad is the least stressed person you could ever meet, but nevertheless, he tested with high blood pressure that day. So, of course, the medications were brought out, and my dad was put on a medication by his doctor to lower his blood pressure. So fast forward 10 days, and we invite my parents out to the lake house for a visit. Maybe, I don't know if we had dinner that day, and we get there, and they arrive, and we go sit on the boat. One of our favorite places to sit is on the end of the dock in the summer, or on the boat, which is on the end of the dock. So we're sitting on the boat, and we're just talking. We're just talking about life. We're talking about family. We're talking about whatever we want to talk about. And my dad, we ask him how he's doing, and he's like, oh, I feel just so tired. I feel like I have mono in a way. I feel like, I don't have any energy at all. And he goes, my legs are all swollen up. So my dad is an amazing, amazing athlete. Even at the time, at age 85, 86, he's in such fantastic physical shape. He has the genetics also. My dad was the first inductee into the Blue Wings Hall of Fame. So my dad knows how to play sports. So he sits down on the boat, and Krista looks at his legs, and she's like, he has shorts on. She says, like, what happened to your legs? And he said, oh, they're all swollen up. He said, I showed these to the doctor. He said it was part of high blood pressure, and they're just like balloons. And his legs are normally very muscular, very, strong but slender. And she asked him how he's feeling. He said, well, I don't feel very good. I feel really, really fatigued. So Krista, being Krista, sitting right beside him on the boat, she takes his pulse. I'll never forget her grabbing his arm and taking his pulse. And she was like counting it. And then she said, I can barely get your pulse. And she continues on, and she said, I have a pulse, she said, a reading of 15 beats a minute. You have a pulse rate of 15 beats a minute. She said, you need to go to the hospital this instant. So Krista's parents at the time lived 5 minutes from us on the way to the hospital. So they said, listen, stop in and see my mom and dad on the way. They have a thing there where they can take your blood pressure, and they'll take your blood pressure and then head into the hospital. So they stop off 5 minutes later, and they Krista's mom, Gerda, takes my dad's blood pressure, and it is so low. I don't remember what the scale was, but it was literally as low as somebody's blood pressure could be if they're still breathing. And then they took his pulse, and of course, 15 beats a minute. So my parents drove into the hospital, into emergency right away. And from there, the nurses and doctors did some quick tests on my dad. They took his pulse rate, they checked his blood pressure, and they rushed him by air ambulance from where we live, a small town, to the city. So he was literally put in one of those air ambulances that get you there in 10 minutes by air. And to make a short story long, my dad was hospitalized for about 5 or 6 days. They did all kinds of tests on him. They tested everything, for, all heart, lungs. They tested for everything. And at the end of the day, they found out that it was the prescription medicine that he had been given by his family doctor that was causing all of these problems. Quite literally, okay, the man hardly takes any medications at age 89, but he was on this medication that had a negative effect on him, and his hands swelled up, his legs swelled up, his feet swelled up. It reduced his heart rate to 15 beats a minute by lowering his so-called high blood pressure. So this doctor didn't say, Frank, you need to improve your diet. This doctor never, of course, recommended exercise or fresh air. Didn't recommend anything in terms of fitness, movement, or diet. None of that stuff. Just immediately on to a medication that almost cost my dad his life. He would have been dead 4 years ago if it wasn't for my wife, Krista. And they took him off the medication after he was in the hospital for a few days, and he literally came back to health. He literally came back to health. He became his old self. Gradually, his feet and his legs and his feet returned to normal. His blood pressure immediately went back up to normal, and all by just being taken off this medication. And my dad, as I said earlier, never had high blood pressure. Maybe that day that he had that was a medical he went to. It wasn't because he was feeling bad when he went to see his doctor originally. It was a medical. It was a medical once a year to test. And his blood pressure was a little bit high that day. Maybe he was worried about something. Maybe he was stressed about something. Who knows? But immediately put on medication that lowered significant. My sister, Catherine, is a head nurse at the Heart Institute. She's an incredibly successful person in the medical system. And she said, you're on that drug. And she's an expert in those types of things because she works specifically with heart patients. She said, you're on that drug to lower your heart rate. She said, is it any wonder that you've literally almost died on that drug? Your pulse rate is 15 beats a minute. She was just like, so they took him off the drug. And within a few days, a handful of days, my dad was my dad again. And I remember visiting him in the hospital, and just, wow, it was just such a surreal feeling seeing my dad in a situation like that. And man, that was the way. It just goes to show you, when you're a person like my wife, Krista, who's always thinking about other people, always serving other people, always, she's not a people pleaser. She's a strong person. She's not a needy person. If you're not a good friend, you're not in her life. But one of her values is being a good friend. Here in Naples, she has all kinds of friends after being here for 2 years. If she goes to a party or goes to a barbecue or goes out golfing, she instantly meets people who become lifelong friends. She's approachable, she's positive, People really like her. She's extremely professional, extremely likable, builds rapport quickly. But she literally saved my father's life by, being genuinely concerned about somebody. When people say to you, like 99% of people, how are you? And then they don't even listen, right? Or how are things going? And they don't even listen. My wife is that 1% of 1% that asks you, how are you? And listens to your response. How are you? Everything good? And listens to your response. Well, when she asked my dad that day, how are you? Man, she meant it. And she was the one that took his pulse. She was the one that sat down beside him. She was the one, she knew this. She knew that he wasn't feeling well before he came to the cottage that day. Before he came to the lake house and sat on the boat, she knew that he hadn't been feeling good. She knew all those things. She just didn't know that his legs had swollen up, his hands had swollen up. And Krista is a researcher, right? Like, she doesn't take any so-called medical expert's opinion over her own. She's an independent thinker. She thinks for herself. She researched. And when my dad that day went by air ambulance to the hospital, my wife was in massive action mode. Like, she gets on the internet and she goes to town on research. I know a lot of that can lead to anxiety and false diagnoses and playing doctor, but she's like, fuck it. She goes, it's the doctor that got him in this situation. And she goes deep on medications. And she was like my sister. She's like, he has no business being on that drug. He had no business prescribing your 85-year-old, 86-year-old father that drug at that level. So it just goes to show you, if there's a lesson in there, is that you've got to take 100% responsibility for your own health. I tell my mastermind guys, I go, there's no such thing. Forget healthcare and focus on self-care. Forget healthcare. In 2023, you don't want to end up counting on healthcare, anything to do with the government or the medical establishment. Are you kidding? You'll die on a gurney in the hallway. You don't want to get cancer. You don't want to have heart disease. You don't want to have diabetes. You don't want to get sick in America, and you certainly don't want to get sick in Canada. Our so-called glorified medical system that we pay 50% taxes for. Well, let me just tell you, you'll die waiting for cancer treatment in Canada. You'll die waiting for chemotherapy. You'll die waiting for a new knee or a new hip. You'll die waiting for surgery. And since the China virus, it's all backed up even more. We know people that are, looking for a knee replacement. They're in chronic pain, hip replacement, knee replacement, whatever it is. And they're literally waiting years for surgeries in Canada. In Krista's dad's case, Krista's dad had a stroke 6 years ago yesterday. And he lives in a retirement facility in Canada. And, he's basically, during the lockdowns and restrictions over the last 3 years, he's been a prisoner in his own room. There's been multiple lockdowns where he has to stay in his room 24/7. No different than somebody serving time in a prison. No different. So he has to sit there and watch TV and play on his iPad and make time go by. But he needed cataract surgery. The guy's 82 years old. He's been an entrepreneur. He's been a successful businessman. He's paid taxes his whole life. And what's his reward in Canada from the medical system that he's paid into for years? 2.5 years waiting for a simple laser cataract system surgery. The man literally went almost blind, sitting in his chair in his room over the last couple years. He literally almost went blind. And Finally, after 2.5 years, all through the China virus nonsense, he finally gets to have the laser surgery. It takes what? It takes about 30 seconds an eye, and the man's got his vision back. He couldn't use his iPad, he couldn't use the TV remote, he couldn't read the newspaper. And this is a guy that was locked up in his room 24/7, sometimes for weeks and months on end. A simple cataract surgery. And in Canada, well, it's next to impossible to use the private care system because they keep, reducing those to the private clinics in Canada are almost non-existent. Here in the United States, we've used the private care system twice with our daughter, once when my mom was visiting here. And I love it, but it's hugely, massively expensive. So it's not for most people, which is a big, big problem. One of the rights that every American and every Canadian should have is the right to Medicare, the right to doctors and nurses if there's a problem. Not abuse of the system, not drugs, not a pharmaceutical factory, but just health care. So, if we weren't able to pay for it, I don't know what my daughter would have done when we needed tests. I don't know what my mom would have done when she was here if she needed tests. We went to a private clinic. The service was insanely good. We got all the stuff done in 2 to 3 hours, but you pay thousands of dollars for it. So I've been on both sides of the fence, and my conclusion is self-care over healthcare. Do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes to take care of yourself so that you can live as long as you can, as independently as you can, on the terms that you want, and at the highest level of health. And that's why I'm out here walking every day for 15,000 steps. It's why I stopped drinking alcohol. It's why I drink a gallon of water a day. It's why I read good physical books. It's the reason I stay off of screens. It's the reason that I don't play video games or watch television or participate in those echo chamber swamps, toxic swamps of anti-social media. I don't follow politics. I don't read the news. I have a couple of sources that I get information from, so I'm more informed than most people with just a couple of sources. I get outside every day in fresh air. I'm out this morning in the moonlight. I'll be out this morning in the sunrise, being around positive people, getting rid of the tomato cans in your life, getting rid of toxic people, habits and activities and substances that no longer serve you. You gotta get them out of your life. They'll take every dream, every goal, every ambition. They'll take all of your inspiration and motivation, and they'll step on it and they'll destroy it. You gotta get those people out of your life. I don't care if they're family, if they're relatives, if they're high school buddies, if they're employees, if they're associates. You gotta get toxic people, toxic habits, and toxic substances out of your life. And the big reason is your health is your number one wealth. If you don't have your health, it doesn't matter how much time you have. If you don't have your health, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Let's break down time for a second. Well, time is your finite, and a lot of people say, well, time is your most valuable resource, and it is more valuable than money. It's actually money buys time. But here's the thing, if you're sick and you're ill, the last thing you want is more time. If you're severely suffering with a terminal illness, you think you want more time? That's the thing. To have more time, to be blessed with more time, to be blessed with years and decades of time, you want to be vibrant, you want to be healthy, you want to be mentally and physically fit, because what's the point? So that's why health is your number one wealth. But if you don't protect it, if you don't nurture it, if you don't take care of you, then there's gonna come a day when you're sitting in a surgeon's office, or there's gonna come a day when you're lying in a gurney in the hospital hallway, freezing your ass off, and the news is not gonna be good. And you're gonna be faced with the fact that Father Time is undefeated. And you're gonna be faced with the fact that decisions that you made in the past, I call them delayed consequences. These delayed consequences of not living the right way, if not being outside in nature, not moving your body, not drinking water, not eating fresh foods. And really the big one for me is staying away from screens and technology for a big chunk of the day. If you're just going to scroll your life away, you're gonna have a come to Jesus moment with a surgeon or a doctor that they're gonna say, you know what, there's not much we can do. And I just wanna do everything I can do to control the controllable. There's nothing this is in God's hands. My life is in God's hands. But he has given me legs to walk. He has given me a brain to think. He has given me intelligence. He has given me wisdom. He's given me all these things, access to books that I can make good, solid decisions to improve my chances. And, you'll hear somebody say, good morning. You'll hear somebody say, well, I could have a stroke today, or I could have a heart attack today. And I'm like, no fucking shit. Especially since you smoke, since you drink, since you eat the wrong foods, since you scroll, since you're a cell phone junkie, since you haven't been outside in 2 days. Yes, you could die. I can be gone this afternoon. But I want to play to win. I want to play offense. I want to give myself the best chance to extend my tour of duty. We're all given a tour of duty, right? Every one of us is given a tour of duty by our Creator. Well, I want to do everything possible to extend that tour of duty. And I'm no health and fitness expert, but I know the things that make me feel good. The foods that I have to eat, the water I have to drink, the books I have to read, the people I have to associate with. A big one is what you choose to do with your career. Like, I get up every day and I'm on a mission. Like, I'm on a mission to serve 1 million men, to help 1 million elite, driven, and generous men build the world of their dreams and become the best version of themselves. That's my mission over the next 10 years. So mentally and health-wise, that's an incredible thing for me, because I have a passion for coaching. I have an obsession for teaching. I get younger helping men. So for me, what you choose to do with your professional life is a huge part. If you're stuck in a man-made prison, a self-built prison, a Frankenstein business, if you're stuck in the grind of a 9-to-5 job that you hate, that's going to have a big, big negative effect on your mental and physical health. So you got to get that corrected. So, that situation with my dad where Krista saved his life, extended his life, it just reminds me, self-care, not healthcare. Self-care, not healthcare. Take care of all the details in your life, what you eat, what you drink. Get out and walk in nature, in fresh air, in the snow, in the rain, in the heat, in the mosquitoes, when you feel good, when you don't feel good. Take time away from those screens. Discipline yourself not to touch that phone till 11 a.m. Win your mornings, conquer the chaos of the afternoon, and invest the time in the evenings where your legacy, the only legacy that'll matter, will be built. And that's time with your queen, your children, your grandchildren, and the people you live that you mean the most. Win your mornings, conquer the chaos of the afternoon, and invest time building your legacy with the people you love in the evenings. 3-prong play, 3-part play. Boom, boom, boom. Win the morning, conquer the chaos of the afternoon, go home and be present and love the people that you respect the most. So that's it for today. I wanted to share that story. I've never shared that story before. One of the things that I'm most grateful for in my life, my wife Krista having the compassion and empathy and awareness, the mental awareness to say, no, this is not working. There's something wrong here. This doesn't feel right. This doctor's diagnosis doesn't feel right. There's something that's wrong here, and using her intuition and her golden gut and taking action, massive action on it to save my dad's life. So my world building brotherhood mastermind, I open the doors for a few days a month. The doors are open for another 48 hours, 2 days. If you're interested, get more information at badassworldbuilders.com. We have a brand new site there that gives you information on the mastermind. It's a year-long online mastermind for top 5% elite businessmen. You need to apply at badassworldbuilders.com. It's $9,997 for the year, but I now offer for the first time monthly payments and a 3 or 4 payment plan. I'm not sure. Go to the site and check it out. So now it's affordable for more small businessmen. We're all small businessmen. I'm a small businessman. You're a small businessman. And this is what this is designed for. It's designed iron sharpens iron. You need to be joined at the hip with other elite men, husbands, fathers, entrepreneurs, grandfathers. You can't scale yourself and your business. You can't become the best version of yourself every day with just videos and books. Even videos and books and newsletters are all important, but there's nothing more powerful than Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich concept of the mastermind. It was the great billionaire Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, and Rockefeller, if I'm not mistaken, who actually came up with this mastermind concept back in the day, where 3, 4, 5 of the most powerful and wealthiest men in America, some of the men that built America, would meet privately every few months and share ideas. They weren't direct competitors, so they used it as immersion. They used it as a way to get around other elite men. They used iron to sharpen iron. Rockefeller, Ford, you just think of that group, Andrew Carnegie. Like, those guys were badass men that built America. And they literally had their own personal mastermind group. Do you think it's important? I mean, masterminds have literally transformed my life personally and professionally. The $30,000 Bill Glazier, Dan Candy mastermind that I was in over a decade ago just transformed my life. I wouldn't be walking here with a broken iPhone if it wasn't for that. I wouldn't have built an 8-figure insurance agency. I wouldn't have built a 7-figure consulting company. I wouldn't have met the people that have become some of our best friends. Man, 2 years in that $30,000 closed door mastermind changed my life. And at the time I was like, I didn't tell myself, I didn't say I can't afford it. I said, how can I afford it? I took the rich dad, poor dad principle of never say that to yourself and always say, how can I afford this? So if $997 seems like a lot per month, $997, you need to ask yourself, how can I afford that? How can I find ways to afford that? If $9,997 seems like a lot for the year, you need to think like a top 5%er and say, how can I afford that? How can I afford to be part of this mastermind that's going to transform my business and my life? Just doing a hot seat on your business. We do a hot seat for an hour, 2 hours on everybody's business. That in itself is worth the price of admission. Plus you're around men, elite men who become your brothers. They become your lifelong friends. You have private coaching from myself. You're just around, you're joined at the hip with other elite men. If there's anything I recommend in 2023 for guys is get around driven, get around elite, and get around super generous men. There's never been a more important time in history to get around winners and get away from losers. You gotta get around the 1%ers, the 2%ers, the 3%ers, and you gotta get away from the mediocre majority. The quiet desperation crowd will not serve you. It will take everything you have out of your life. So really, really important that you get around other elite men. I don't care if you join my mastermind or somebody else's mastermind. I don't care if you start your own mastermind. Just make sure you're in a mastermind, okay? Whether you join mine isn't gonna change my life. It's not gonna change where I live or the vehicle I drive or any of that stuff. So just get in somebody's mastermind. If you're interested in mine, badassworldbuilders.com, and we'll work with you. badassworldbuilders.com. After the year, if you say, Michael, that wasn't worth the investment, or anytime during the year, you have my personal warranty on everything I do. You just send an email to Leanne, my assistant, and say, Leanne, that wasn't what I thought it would be. I would like a refund. And you'll get every penny that you paid back that day. So there's no risk. What is more fair than that? Monthly payments, 4 payments, 1 payment, and a 100% guarantee from the boss. If it doesn't transform your life, if it doesn't 2x or 5x or 10x your life and business, just send a simple email to Leanne. You don't have to give a reason. Just say, I'd like my money back, and we'll write you a check that day or refund your money that day. No hard feelings, no my dog ate my breakfast, none of that stuff. You won't even deal with me, you'll deal with Leanne. So badassworldbuilders.com. The information, you apply, I get back to you within 72 hours. We decide whether I'm the right coach for you. Hard coaching is not for everybody, so that's important. Intense work like this is not for everybody. We're the Navy SEALs of masterminds. I push these guys hard. I push them to be better. I hold them accountable. I make them become the best version of themselves. I push, I demand, I expect, and I don't tolerate or suffer fools. So very important, this can transform your life if you're willing to put in the work. badassworldbuilders.com. 2 words that change my life, 2 words that can change your life. Be relentless.